Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you connected with us today. I will start slowly as participants are still getting inside the online room. So welcome to the MSP Global Online Conference. We are here today to close the second phase of MSP Global project, but also to start the third phase. My name is Michele Quesada da Silva. I'm the MSP Global Coordinator, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's event. So I would like to start with a few housekeeping information. So this event has simultaneous interpretation in English, French, and Spanish. You can select your preferred language by clicking on the globe icon on the bottom of your Zoom bar. We have the Zoom chat on, but please use this mainly for technical issues in case you are not listening to us or any other type of issue. Then our team will try to support you. And we will also use the chat to share some relevant information with you, such as web links to the documents that we are launching today. And our way to interact with the audience, it will be through Zoom polls. So as we have a very intense agenda in the next 3 hours, we will not have the time to specific questions from the audience to the speakers, but we will interact with you through these Zoom polls at the end of each session. So our agenda for today, we'll start with a welcome session. Then we'll have a session about the new rapid assessment methodology. Another one about the new guidelines and good practices that we developed under 2.0. We will have a 10 minutes health break to drink some water and straight the legs. And after that, we'll talk about MSP Global 3.0. So what we are planning for the next 2 years, and a short closing session. So let's start with the session 1, the welcome session. So I would like to invite Julian Barbier and Felix to turn on their cameras. We'll start with Julian, Head of Marine Policy and Regional Coordination Section at the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, for his opening remarks. Julian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and greetings from Tokyo. Dear colleagues, dear delegates, it's a great honor to welcome you to this important moment on the occasion of this MSP Global Conference. This year is also very important for us. It is also very important for the ocean. We had a UN Ocean Conference. We are getting close to ratification of the BBNJ agreement, so it's great progress. We at the IOC are also celebrating 20 years of work in Marine Spatial Planning, which started 2 decades ago, and our journey very much started with the convening of the first international workshop in MSP in 2005, and then was followed by the development of the first international guide on MSP, the step-by-step guide, which has been a reference. That was a pioneering effort, really a tool to help member states navigate uncharted waters in planning the sustainable use of their seas. Since then, our knowledge base has expanded tremendously, and so has MSP practice, really as a tool adopted by many coastal nations around the world. I think today we are proud to have a full portfolio of resources, of guidelines, of national and regional documents, which really have been built by and for the MSP community. All those resources are freely available through our MSP Global Knowledge Platform, and also continues to grow as a hub for exchange and learning and collaboration. Over time, the MSP Global itself has evolved into a full program within the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. At its core lies the MSP Global project, co-funded by the European Commission. But its strength really comes from the many associated projects and collaboration with partners around the world. And I need to emphasize it. Together, these activities are guided by the MSP roadmap, the joint framework developed by the IOC and the European Commission's DG MARE to accelerate the implementation of MSP worldwide. It's also worth remembering that IOC's work on MSP began as part of our institutional strategy on integrated coastal area management. The aim then was to extend the lessons learned from coastal management to the entire exclusive economic zones of member states. Today, this work has taken a new dimension under the recently adopted strategy on sustainable ocean planning and management that IOC member states adopted last June. This strategy is very important. It provides an umbrella framework that brings together all marine policy instruments, from marine spatial planning to integrated coastal management, from marine protected areas to sectoral approach to sustainable ocean economies. It also serves as a mechanism to integrate the entire IOC value chain, from the science, the ocean observation, the data, which is required to underpin ocean planning, but also the early warning systems, all the way to supporting knowledge-based marine policies. This is really where science meets governance and where knowledge translates into action. Today's event is therefore a milestone for us. We will be launching several new products co-developed under MSPglobal over the last 2 years, concrete tools to help member states strengthen their MSP process, but also to incorporate global ocean targets into their national processes, particularly in relation to marine biodiversity and climate change. And just as importantly, we will also set sails for the third phase of the MSPglobal core project, ensuring that the momentum we have built continues to grow in the years ahead. And I also really want to highlight the contribution of a wonderful team behind all this work. This team is led by Michel, and you will hear from many of those experts who have been engaged in conducting this work in the course of the event. Before closing, I really want to express our sincere and deep gratitude to the European Commission, to DG MARE, to Felix and his team for their steadfast partnership, which really started around 2017. So we will, in the course of MSPglobal 3.0, actually celebrate 10 years of collaboration on MSP. And this really has allowed IOC not only to expand, but also to consolidate our MSP work globally and to achieve the goals that we have set for our member states. And finally, I want to also thank all of those who have contributed to this process, because we are not working on our own. We're working through the contribution of national experts, of national and regional institutions, and member states. So thank you for your commitments, your knowledge and passion. And I think together we have come a long way, and together we will continue shaping a future where the ocean is managed sustainably, equitably, and wisely for the benefit of people and planet alike. So thank you very much, and please enjoy this conference. Over to you, Michel.
Thank you, Julian. And now I'd like to welcome Felix Leinemann, the head of unit for blue economy sectors, aquaculture, and maritime spatial planning of the European Commission's Directorate-General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. Felix, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Julian, for those very welcoming words. Good morning, everyone from Brussels. It's a real pleasure to join you today at this important moment where we move from MSPglobal 2.0 and launch MSPglobal 3.0. And like Julian, I can say that 2025 is a critical year for ocean action. At the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice in June, the President of the European Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, presented an European Union action, the European Ocean Pact, which is a comprehensive strategy to better protect the ocean, to promote a thriving blue economy, and to support the well-being of people living in coastal areas. The pact brings together EU ocean policies under one single reference framework and addresses the significant threats that our ocean is facing, that cares about our coastal communities, islands, and outermost regions. And obviously, maritime spatial planning is at the center of this pact as a key enabler of healthy marine ecosystems and a competitive and sustainable blue economy. MSP is one of the most powerful tools that we have to turn ambition into action. Also in Nice, the European Union committed to continue our close cooperation with the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO through the MSPglobal initiative. Julian mentioned our cooperation since 2017. The European Union started quite later than UNESCO working on MSP, but we have a binding law that requires all member states to have maritime spatial plans. And this is how in Europe, MSP is already at the heart of our blue economy. We have 20 out of 22 coastal member states that already have a plan in place, and all of the coastal states that are engaged in maritime spatial planning. We have had dozens of collaborative projects at sea basin level over the past decades. And this is how MSP allows us to manage competing uses of our seas, from shipping to offshore wind, and from aquaculture to conservation in a way that is sustainable, integrated, and forward-looking. But Europe is not everything, and we need to think about the ocean as a whole. And that's why international cooperation on MSP is so important. And this is what MSPglobal is all about. Let me express a big thank you to UNESCO's IOC for your strong leadership on the MSPglobal initiative, and also to all our partners and practitioners across the globe who have made this effort such a success. MSPglobal has been a flagship for regional dialogue, for capacity building, and for shared methodologies, like, for example, the rapid assessment methodology that we're going to hear about in a second. And it's a great example on how practical tools can see broader transformation. With the European Ocean Pact, the European Commission sent a strong political signal that we need a more coherent, inclusive, and science-based approach to international ocean governance. The pact calls for improved coordination between the many global and regional frameworks that govern our seas, and it emphasizes the importance of collaboration across borders, across sectors. In this context, MSP can also be a mechanism to foster regional cooperation, to share data, to work better on ocean observation, and to align national and international objectives. I look forward to this webinar, to seeing the results and the products. I look forward that we can finally disseminate them and to make them better known all around the world. And I look forward to continuing our collaboration in the time ahead. A big thank you to all of you who have been involved, and wishing us a fruitful webinar. Back to you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you to both of you. So without further ado, I would like to move to the next session. So the session 2, yes, this one. It's about the MSPglobal Rapid Assessment Methodology, which for us, it's a kind of a seed initiative for other projects implemented not only by IOC, but also by other organizations to flourish. So the objective of this session is to disseminate this new methodology and also to listen to the national representatives from the first countries where we implemented the RAM. So they will share a bit their experience. So I would like to start with a presentation by Joseph Kof-Ansong. He was the leading author of this methodology. So Kofi, you can turn on your camera. Welcome. And then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, for the introduction. I guess before I get into the presentation of the rapid assessment methodology itself, I guess it's important to just give a quick background on how the methodology came about. So I think the methodology was born out of a gap or a need that we found when working with countries that were starting with marine spatial planning, and even countries that were even advanced with MSP, but probably the momentum had dwindled based on lack of funding, government change, or progress for MSP was not being seen. So the key over here was to develop a methodology that would help countries to identify the concrete actions that they need to follow for the development of MSP. If you can go to the next slide, please. So basically, with this methodology, the aim is to support them in terms of having a bit more of a shared understanding or a shared concrete actions of the way forward when it comes to marine spatial planning within their various countries. So in terms of how the methodology works, it's key that as they set out on the pathway towards advancing marine spatial planning through the methodology, they understand which actions has already been undertaken by the country. And by actions, we're already looking at what has already been done when it comes to MSP and what's already in the process or they are doing when it comes to marine spatial planning. And it's also about thinking about the future actions that are necessary to advance the process within the country. And it's important to realize that the methodology helps these countries to support the development of work plans in terms of its added value and roadmaps. It's also a kind of methodology, and in terms of the product or the output, supposed to help or guide the use of human and technical financial resources available, how that can be coordinated a bit better, because you realize that in certain countries there might be funding coming through, but it's going to different departments, and there's the need for that shared understanding of where resources are supposed to be going when it comes to MSP. Then again, it's also supposed to inform the future development of technical and financial proposals. So in a way, if you have these concrete action plans, you're able to go to funders to tell them that these are the areas where MSP is needed and these are the areas where funding needs to go when it comes to MSP within the country. The next slide, please. I think this has already been mentioned previously by Felix and Julian as well, but this is a process that started about 2 years ago. And I think a lot of us on the call will very well know about the MSP step-by-step approach and also the MSP Global Guide on MSP, which came out in 2021. So when we started the process, what we wanted to do was to align both guidelines to make sure that they are speaking to each other and we are kind of picking up on the key steps that we wanted to use to inform the methodology. So what we tried to do was to align it, as you can see in the table, to pick up on the key activities that each country, a country that's trying to develop MSP, needs to follow. And obviously, this is, as you can see, the alignments that we're able to come out with, especially with the new guidance that was talking about the fact that MSP happens in phases and it doesn't necessarily have to go on a step-by-step approach as has been suggested in the guidelines in 2009, especially if you're thinking about a methodology that's supposed to guide the development of concrete action. So this is what we did, the alignment, and in the next slide, I'll talk a bit more about how that informed the methodology itself. So this is the MSP Global Rapid Assessment methodology. It's already been published, it's online, so it's in English, it's in Spanish, and it's also in French as well. And just to say quickly that before the publication of the guide or the methodology, we did reach out to the countries that were implementing it to get feedback on the development of the guide. So we got feedback from there, and based on that feedback, that's what led to the publication of the guide. So if you go through the guide, if you follow through the link over there and go through the guide, it's in 3 steps. So it's a 3-step approach that we use. So the first step is identifying existing MSP related initiatives, and not only the MSP related initiatives, but also if there's been any initiative related to capacity development, you can pick that one up as well. I'll talk a bit more about it later on. The step 2 is about understanding the status of each MSP phases. And I need to clarify over here is that you are not going through the phases to develop another plan. You're just going through the phases to understand what has already been done and if there is any gaps that needs to be filled up in terms of the delivery of the MSP phases. Then you go to step 3, where you actually co-develop the MSP action plan. If you go through the methodology, I think what we mentioned in there is that apart from going through these steps, we suggest that you hold around 2 to 3 workshops with stakeholders to discuss the outputs from step 1, step 2, and also to discuss the co-development of the MSP action plan as well. In the next slides, I'll go through each of the steps and what it entails as well. So when we're talking about the step 1, what we came out with is a template, a fact sheet that helps you to collate the relevant information when it comes to step 1. So this is an example of the template or the table that's being used. So what we suggest is that in the beginning of the process, identify all the key MSP related initiatives that has been implemented in the country. And this is going to be country specific. It can be province specific or region specific in terms of what has been done already. So it can be 10 initiatives, 20 initiatives. But what's important is that you use this table for each one of the initiatives that has been implemented in the country to understand the scale that it was developed, to understand which countries districts were involved, who was the lead. But I think what is critical over here for this step one is to understand what was the main objective of the initiative, what was done, what were the outputs, and it starts making you think about what were the gaps when it comes to each of the initiatives that was implemented in the country. The next slide, please. Which is more about the step two. So when you go to step two, which is a bit different from step one, you're thinking more about each of the MSP phases, the activities within the phases, and what was done to deliver that phase or that activity. And if you look at the template that we have on the screen, we try to give certain element of tips on what needs to be done in terms of this assessment and some example from the two guys that you can look at to follow through. So for example, if you're looking at setting the scene, which is the phase one, when you go through MSP Global Guide, it's about setting up your institutional framework, the need for MSP authority, and funding for MSP. So you need to understand at that point what has been done to identify the institutional and legal framework, understand what has already been done to identify the sources of funding for MSP. And that's how you go through all the phases to understand what has been done and what needs doing in the future. So has there already been an MSP team already established in the country? In some countries, sometimes you have ICZM working groups. Sometimes you have SOP groups as well. Could that be used also to inform marine spatial planning? So it's about thinking through some of what has already been done and what needs to be done in the future. So for example, as well, if you're thinking about conducting assessment for planning, it's about thinking through what assessment has already been done that can inform MSP. Were these assessments a bit more spatial? Were they not spatial? Is there any mapping that needs to go along with it? And that would inform some of the gaps that you need to kind of identify as part of the process. Next slide, please. What we do find is that when you start getting into the phase 4, 5, and 6, which is more about developing the MSP plan, implementation and monitoring and evaluation for a country that's starting out with MSP, sometimes you might not have a lot of information related to that because MSP is now starting. But what we recommend is that at that stage, you can look at the ICZM process, you can look at some of the MPA processes as well, some of the terrestrial planning processes to understand what has already been developed, what were the implementation mechanisms, and when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, how that can be used to inform marine spatial planning. Next slide, please. So in the whole, if you go through step 1 and step 2, what it comes down to is step 3, where it's a bit of the meat of the whole process or the whole methodology, where you are developing the MSP action plan. Based on what we've already implemented, you kind of start, if you go through step 1 and 2, you start kind of coming out with certain themes for marine spatial planning and the actions that you're supposed to develop. So some of the themes might be around capacity development, institutional governance, stakeholder engagement, data evidence monitoring. In some countries, there might be the need for pilot projects to advance MSP. So you might have some actions around there. Obviously, there would be actions around resource mobilizations as well. So after being able to develop these themes based on step 1 and 2, then you can start having discussion with stakeholders and based on the review around the MSP actions that's needed to kind of advance MSP. And what we do suggest is that based on the actions that are going to be developed, you start putting a timeline on it. And the timeline might not be on annual basis or monthly basis, but it could be on quarterly basis as well, based on how you approach the whole process. But what we do recommend is that to create ownership for each of the actions, it's important that you identify lead and supporting authorities that are going to advance each of the actions that you are going to be developing. It's also important that you identify the resourcing and also the costing needs for each of the actions that are going to be developed under each of these teams, which is very important. You might not have the actual figures when it comes to the costing of each of these actions, but it's important that even if you have the costing or resources needs around, is it human development, is it more around equipment that you need for marine spatial planning, say GIS or computers, it's important that all these resourcing needs are clarified so that when you are thinking more about going in for funding, you know exactly what you need for that to be funded. Again, I think what's important for me to note is that this has been implemented in countries which you'll be hearing a bit more about it in the next presentation in terms of their experience with using the methodology. And yeah, thank you so much. And back to you, Michele.
Thank you, Kofi, for your presentation, but also for all your support during MSPglobal 2.0. So Kofi was also responsible for developing the MSPglobal online training course, which is available in the IOC Ocean Teacher Global Academy. So it's an online self-paced course available in English, Spanish, and French. It's open to anyone interested in the course. So if you are also interested in this product developed by Kofi, you can check more information on the MSPglobal website. So we will move now to the panel with the national representatives of the 5 first countries where we implemented the RAM. So I would like to invite them to turn on their camera. So from Benin, we have Lambert Aichu, the coordinator of the Coastal Protection Program against coastal erosion in Benin, and acting Director-General of the National Coastal Protection and Management Unit of the Ministry of Living Environment and Transport. We also have from Côte d'Ivoire, Alimata Fofana, the head of the Regional Office of Côte d'Ivoire's Anti-Pollution Center, CIAPOL, in Yamoussoukro. From Togo, we have Professor Gabriel Signac-Beto from the University of Lomé. And from Thailand, we have Chanopong Jantarakanti, the director of the MPA subdivision of the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources. And from Brazil, we have Marine Scherer, the COP30 Special Envoy for the Ocean and professor at the Federal University of Santa Catarina. So when Kofi explained the 3 steps of the rapid assessment methodology, it's important for you as audience to know that the implementation of the RAM, it has 2 outputs. So step 1 and 2 is one publication, which is more the assessment, the diagnosis, and also these initial recommendations of what needs to be done. And for these 5 countries, we are launching that document today. And then the step 3 of the methodology is a second document that they are almost finishing, which is exactly the action plan. That the idea is that this action plan is used by the country and by the partners of the country in the field of MSP to advance MSP. So I always call this like the wish list of the country, because the methodology is implemented with the national authorities, so they define the actions, so they can guide what are their needs to advance MSP. So I would like to start this panel with a question to each of our speakers in relation to the implementation of the RAM. So based on the results of each technical report that we are launching, I want them to tell a bit what's the status of MSP in their country, so for the audience to know, but also for them to share what are their main immediate gaps, needs to address in order to advance MSP. So I would like to first invite Lambert for his thoughts about that.
Bonjour à tous. Merci, Michel, pour
Good morning to one and all, and thank you to Michel for this introduction.
J'espère que vous m'entendez.
I hope you can hear me.
Et je voudrais donc vous remercier pour cette question.
I would like to thank you for asking me this question. In Benin, with MSP Global 2.0, we have been able to make progress, although a lot still remains to be done. And we have moved forward significantly in terms of MSP in our country, because MSP began in 2018 with the Mami Wata initiative, which involves integrated management of coastal areas. And this enabled us to hold training workshops as well as develop tools and the development of ecologically and biologically significant areas. However, there was a lack of documentation. But thanks to MSP Global in 2023, and thanks to the training we organized, we have been able to make progress. And today, thanks to the rapid assessment methodology, which has been presented earlier on today, we have been able to develop our assessment report. And today we know exactly where we stand. On the basis of this assessment, we've been able to identify all of the initiatives which have been implemented in relation to MSP, as well as the legislative framework that exists. This is information we hadn't collected beforehand, but thanks to the RAM, we've been able to collect that data. There are a number of initiatives and existing laws which we've been able to record thanks to this assessment. We have also been able to identify that it is necessary to implement a specific legal framework dedicated to MSP. This is something that doesn't exist for the time being. We also know that financing is not sufficiently sustainable because international partners are not always available to fund that process. Now, our minister, the Ministry of Transport, is in charge of guiding this process. However, there's a number of fragmented initiatives, so we'll need to harmonize the process. We've been working with the Ministry of Fishery Resources, but there is still a lack of infrastructure in order to address this effectively. Unfortunately, the speaker is no longer audible for the interpreters. We do apologize.
I think we had an issue with Lambert's connection. Let me just see if he's still... Yeah, I think his connection failed. But we do got to know what's the status in Benin. So I will now give the floor to Alimata to also tell us a bit about the status of MSP in Côte d'Ivoire and what are the main immediate needs of the country. Alimata, the floor is yours. Oh, we have Lambert back. Just Lambert, if you want to conclude. Yeah, I think we'll jump to Alimata.
Désolé.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Apologies.
J'espère qu'on m'entend.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Alors, il faut dire que la planification spatiale marine
Now,
a débuté
Marine
en Côte
Spatial
d'Ivoire
Planning began in Côte
au
d'Ivoire
projet
thanks to the Mami Wata project.
Nous avons mis en œuvre un projet pilote
We
qu'on a
implemented a
appelé,
pilot
projet
project
de gestion intégrée
which
de l'aire
we
marine et côtière.
called
Excusez-moi,
Integrated
j'ai un chat dans la gorge.
Management
Le
Project
projet de
for
gestion
coastal areas.
intégrée de
Apologies,
l'aire
I
marine et
keep
côtière
coughing
d'Abidjan
today.
à Assini.
Now, we implemented this pilot project as part of the umbrella Mami Water initiative, and we implemented MSP in the Great Basin area. Before this, we trained a team from Côte d'Ivoire in Senegal on the MSP tool use. This enabled us to acquire knowledge in terms of MSP. Now, the MSP Global 2.0 project enabled us to strengthen MSP in Côte d'Ivoire thanks to the rapid assessment methodology. As part of this MSP Global project, we've been able to train stakeholders who were identified within the integrated management of the Abidjan area project. We have also trained them within the framework of MSP Global. Now, when it comes to the rapid assessment methodology, we were able to identify 19 initiatives which are related to MSP in Côte d'Ivoire. We have also developed an action plan at national level for the implementation of MSP. And hopefully this will be published shortly. Yesterday, I received good news regarding the first publication of this initiative, which is related to MSP in Côte d'Ivoire. Now, when it comes to the implementation of MSP tools in Côte d'Ivoire, there are a number of different stakeholders operating within the coastal marine space in Côte d'Ivoire. So we identified all of the various stakeholders, and we also looked at legislation. There are sectoral laws on fishing, maritime transport, navigation, the management of coastal areas. There are sectoral laws that exist, but there's not an umbrella legal and institutional text that fully harmonizes MSP. We also have another challenge ahead of us, which is designating the authority responsible for the implementation of MSP in Côte d'Ivoire. When there is no authority able to coordinate all of the activities taking place in the coastal areas of Côte d'Ivoire, it's very difficult to organize these activities. There's a lack of coordination. So everyone is doing what they can, but it's very difficult under these circumstances to truly gauge progress made, the relevance of projects, and the real impact of MSP. So these are some of the challenges we're facing. The challenge of designating an authority to coordinate all of the activities taking place along the coastal and marine areas of Côte d'Ivoire is a challenge. And another challenge is the implementation of a framework for consultation among all stakeholders. Now, perhaps this could be carried out once an authority is designated. Now, there's also the matter of a legislative framework which would truly regulate and harmonize MSP in Côte d'Ivoire. We know that the use of the MSP tool can be very costly. So if we are not able to access funding from donors, it can be very difficult to implement the MSP tools and activities under the National Action Plan, which we've developed as part of the RAM. So That's just an overview of some of the challenges we're facing when it comes to making progress in MSP in Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Alimata, for sharing the experience. So the first two countries that we listened to, Benin and Côte d'Ivoire, they both were beneficiary countries of another MSP project, the Mamiwata project. And it was, of course, one of the initiatives that we mapped in the step 1. And in the case of Côte d'Ivoire, it was really interesting to see during this process of the rapid assessment, the national authorities and also the local authorities reflecting how they could use the experience they had in this local pilot done by the Mamiwata, how to expand these to the whole coast of Côte d'Ivoire and start thinking more broadly, as Alimata said, in terms of national authority in charge and legislation and so on. And this challenge of funds, I think this is a common challenge for almost every single country dealing with MSP. And we hope that the action plan can help with that as well. So the country has this as a work plan, but a detailed one where the costs of the activities that they need to do is somehow listed. So this can be used by them to get not only public funds for that, but also to talk to partners that are willing to support MSP. Thanks a lot, Alimata, and I will move now to Professor Gabriel to tell us a bit about Togo. You are muted.
Oui, maintenant ça va. Est-ce que vous me recevez?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very well.
Thank you very much. Okay, I said that I'll go to give my speech in French, please. I'm francophone. Le processus de la planification spatiale marine
The process of MSP in Togo began in 2021, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. At the time, the first activities were undertaken in Togo. We didn't yet have a pilot project for MSP. So the first one was the Water Initiative. There had been a regional project, I believe it was in Guinea-Bissau or Sao Tome. So at the beginning, we had to designate the authority responsible for implementing MSP. I was invited to take part in this process, and we were able to agree on how we would lead that process, as we had the High Council for the Sea, which already existed in Togo and which was directly under the responsibility of the President of the Republic. So designating an authority responsible for MSP was not an issue. Since 2021, we have organized 4 training activities or workshops, which mainly address 2 groups of stakeholders. After designating the authority for MSP, we designated the pilot committee for MSP under the responsibility of the High Council for the Sea. And then we also set up a technical committee. So the 4 workshops organized between 2021 and 2025 involved those stakeholders. They were funded by the High Council for the Sea itself, and we were also able to access other types of funding through the Mamiwata initiative and then through the MSPglobal 2.0. And there is also another project which is funding MSP activities in Togo. We have also been able to count on support through the rapid assessment methodology in Togo, and I'd like to thank the MSPglobal team. So now we have the rapid assessment methodology, which has been published, and we're also working on a document which we call the National Strategy for MSP. It is inspired by the action plan, which is part of the MSP Global document, the second publication. Now, looking at all of these initiatives, I believe what's important to take away is that these initiatives enabled Togo to conduct a thorough assessment of the institutional and legal framework. The initiatives have enabled us to conduct a thorough analysis and identify gaps which will need to be addressed. I would also add that the strategy document has enabled us to identify 5 goals which have been declined into action plans, which are currently being approved. And hopefully, within a few months, the action plan and strategy will be documents that Togo can draw on to make further progress. So that's just an overview of what we've been doing in Togo over the past few years. And here, I'd like to thank UNESCO through its MSPglobal project, as well as the World Bank for their support, as well as the CPCO and other partners who have supported us in our projects in Togo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gabriel. And I think from this case of Togo, it was very interesting for us to, during the process of developing the rapid assessment and the action plan, already support Togo to talk to other partners that they were already liaising with, such as the World Bank, but also a Jeff project that was about to start, to tell these other partners saying, well, we will have an action plan soon with the wish list of Togo. So is it possible for your new project to accommodate some of these actions? So this is also a bit of our role that we are trying to do with the rapid assessment. So now we move to another region. So we go to Thailand and we'll listen from Chanokpong from their experience.
Everyone. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank the MSPglobal program for providing Thailand with the opportunity to participate in this important initiative and to benefit from the rapid assessment methodology. Thailand has incorporated MSP into the national plan and has already started with a pilot site. We were working to advance MSP at the national level, but but we recognize that this will take time. But now we just start in the pilot site and we will provide in the national level. So based on the result of the LAM, Thailand is still an early stage of the Marine Spatial Planning. However, the assessment has allowed us to identify a number of the key enabling steps that will help us move forward. This includes improving our legal and regulatory framework to provide a stronger basis for MSP implementation, as well as strengthening institutional alignment to ensure better coordination among national agencies, local government, and stakeholders. Another important step is the development of the reliable database and official maritime map, which are essential for evidence-based planning and decision-making. We also recognize the importance of enhancing public participation and stakeholder knowledge so that local community resources users and private sector are fully engaged in the MSP process. Establishing effective national and local MSP mechanism is another priority, as is building human and institutional capacity through target training, technical support, and awareness raising activities. In short, while Thailand is still at the beginning of this journey, the LAM has helped us set clear direction and priority to advance marine spatial planning in structured and inclusive way. So we will present the result of the LAM to the National Marine Spatial Committee to move forward. Also, we got a good news from the Michelle yesterday. The report of the LAM of Thailand was just published in the UNESCO already. So thank you, the UNESCO, for the support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanopong. And so during 2.0, we worked mainly in two regions, which was the Atlantic coast of Africa and the Western Pacific. So we are listening from the implementation of RUN in these two regions. And in Thailand, similar to Côte d'Ivoire, I think the implementation of the RUN, it was a lot built in local pilots that they had experience in using MSP, and also thinking how to expand these and coordinate these local pilots from the national perspective, and also how to align these with upcoming projects. So in the middle of the process, the World Bank also started supporting Thailand in MSP. So there is this conversation between the technical reports and assessments of the two initiatives. So thanks a lot, Chanopong. I move now to another region. So now we'll listen from Marinês. And the case of Brazil was not a direct beneficiary country of MSPglobal 2.0, but it was the first country that we implemented the RUN through a collaboration with another project. So Marinês will tell us a bit more, but basically the RUN was implemented by a project co-funded by GIZ, and the role of the MSPglobal team in this case was to guide those working with GIZ and the national authorities to implement the RUN. So the methodology is available now. So as IOC, we will use this methodology when we support member states, but it's also open for collaboration to other projects to use the methodology as well. So Marinês, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and I'm very happy to be here and to be able to talk a little bit more about the process in Brazil. So MSP for Brazil is very essential because it helps us to organize the use of our sea, and it's a very important area for Brazil because it contributes significantly to the national GDP, and it's home to traditional peoples and communities. And as all around the world, we have increasing pressures from human activities and climate change. So we use the MSPglobal Rapid Assessment methodology, and it helped us identify existing initiatives and confirm that the process is already advancing on several fronts in Brazil. And it also helped us to bring greater visibility to the MSP process in the country. So for that, we sincerely thank MSPglobal and GIZ, not only for supporting the implementation of the rapid assessment methodology, but also for their continued assistance throughout the entire MSP process in Brazil. So I would like to highlight some things that you find out or that they were more structured through the rapid assessment. So we could really put that we have regional projects. We are developing MSP in the South, Southeast, Northeast, and North region of Brazil, in the entire EEZ of Brazil. And we identify several important sectoral initiatives, but sometimes are fragmented, like conservation, ports, mariculture, tourism, oil and gas, renewables. And we also identify several sectoral legislations. And through this process, we identify critical gaps and needs, such as we need to integrate integrated coastal zone management with MSP. We need to strengthen a specific national legal framework for MSP. We need to improve of marine and geospatial data systems because we have some, but they must be further improved. We definitely need to have clear goals and objectives for MSP at both national and regional levels. There are two programs or projects that we stand out that we do need to develop. That one of them is the National Capacity Building Plan, because we need to promote more broad knowledge about the MSP process, enabling different stakeholders to understand and engage. Or we need the guidelines for social participation, because we need to really have it clear how people will be engaged and be part of the process. And also, it's part of that, we need a national communication plan for MSP. So from all that needs or gaps that we identify, we develop the action plan, and this action plan will guide Brazilians' next steps. And I'm pleased to say that one of the gaps that we identified, that was a law specific for MSP, was established earlier this year as part of this process. And also, one of the key achievements of this process was increase the visibility of the entire process through workshops and presentations. So doing this process for Brazil was very, very good for the MSP process entirely. So thank you very much for the opportunity to using this methodology in Brazil.
Thank you, Marinês. To close our panel, I want the other three speakers to come back, turn on their cameras. So Lambert, Alimata, and Gabriel. And as we expect that that other countries use the RAM, if you could quickly, like 1 minute, tell us about the main benefits and challenge that you had implementing the RAM. So a bit of lessons learned for the next countries that will use the methodology. So Lambert, maybe we can start with you. So the lessons learned from Benin.
Merci beaucoup, Michel.
Thank you very much, Michel. Well, I think we've learned a lot from the whole process. And once again, I want to thank you for that, because actually, thanks to this methodology, we were able to have a clear mapping and understanding of the existing situation, and we found that it was really easy to use and help us identify everything in all sectors: conservation, regional governance, fisheries, and other marine issues. And it gave us a more structured approach with those 6 phases of the MSP, and so we thought that was really useful. Also, the fact that it was multidisciplinary was very important, and it gave us a shared shared vision. We were able to really gain a shared vision, which we also thought was really, really positive. So that's what I can say in terms of the advantages. But there are some challenges, nonetheless, to overcome. And we have noticed the institutional fragmentation and the difficulty in coordinating all the different stakeholders, and we're working on it, and we'll get there. And we also want to make sure that we can work more hand in hand with the onshore and offshore stakeholders. So by way of conclusion, I would say that the RAM enabled us a successful mapping initiatives, mobilize all stakeholders, and achieve a shared vision of all of our MSP initiatives. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lambert. So now, Alimata, if you can share your lessons learned, the benefits and challenges of implementing the RAM.
Merci beaucoup, Michel.
Thank you very much, Michel. Well, what I could say about this methodology is that we were able to identify the MSP initiatives and everything related to MSP that was already in existence. And we also were able to identify all of the different stakeholders in the coastal and maritime issues. We were able to identify all of them. And together, we were able to draft a national action plan, and we did this in Gamasam. But from there, we need to be able to roll it out across the whole region, and not only in Gamasam. We've also come up with a MSP management plan for Gamasam, and we want to extend that to the rest of the coastline using the RAM. And so it's in publication version 2, and it's all thanks to this initiative. Now, when it comes to challenges, well, I would say that we didn't actually have a concrete database where we could store all of the initiatives that were connected with the MSP. And we think that that's necessary. It'd be really useful to have it so that it can be consultable, accessible, so that we don't have to continually disseminate information to all of the MSP-related initiatives, to all the relevant stakeholders. And another challenge is the designation of the competent authorities for implementing the MSP action plan in Côte d'Ivoire. Once that's clearly defined, I think it'll actually make sure that we've got a legal and institutional framework that can adequately channel these initiatives and ensure that the rollout is as smooth as possible throughout Côte d'Ivoire. I think that'll be a major step forward. Thank you. Thank you very, very much to MSP. Thanks to the IOC and to all of you for making this happen. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Alimata. And now let's listen to the lessons learned from Togo.
Thank you, Michel. I think that the rapid assessments and the beginning of the action plan that we are developing with IOC UNESCO in the framework of the global MSP project is very useful for us. In Togo particularly, we use these two initiatives as a baseline for the development of national strategy of MSP process in Togo. And now, increasing in the strategy, we have now the different steps that we have to use, and we use also the MSPglobal methodology and the guides line that we publish in the MSP initiative. So now we are going to have a national workshop for the validations of the national strategy. And I think that the document is to be used for the national program. It should be a program that we are seeking, or we are looking for a funding through different mechanisms like adaptation fund, GCF, or Jeff project that we are going to develop next year, probably in Togo, to see the way that we can looking for more funding for the MSP project in Togo. So the rapid assessment was very useful for us in the development of the strategy, and this strategy will be included in national program for the coastal marine environment management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gabriel. I think Alimata wants to add something.
Merci, Gabriel. Je voulais
Thank you,
juste
Gabriel. Yes, I
savoir,
just
est-ce que
wanted to
Togo peut
know,
inviter la Côte d'Ivoire
is
lors de
Togo
l'animation de
able
cette
to invite
stratégie
Côte
pour que ça
d'Ivoire
fasse
along when you
taille bonne
inaugurate
aussi
that,
pour le
so
partage
that we can?
d'expérience?
I'm wondering if we
Merci.
could
Si c'est
share that with
possible de nous
CARICOM as
inviter.
well. I was
Merci.
wondering, would it be possible to invite us? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Cela ne pose pas problème. Seulement, je pense que
Absolutely,
peut-être qu'on
no
va voir,
problem. Although I really don't know. Maybe into the CPCU will we have some way of funding your participation? Or I don't know whether you've got the budget for taking part. So I could actually look into that and see if there's a document that might, maybe we could validate that. But the document that I've been working on, I was doing it with Frédéric. I think he's actually in the panel here. He's not speaking, but I think he's a participant in this workshop. And Philippe also really helped us with the strategy documents. So thanks again for
Merci,
that. Thank you.
Gabriel.
Thank you, Gabriel.
So we are seeing synergies being discussed in real time. I'm happy with that. And now I would like to listen to Chanopon about the lessons learned from Thailand.
Yes. So for Thailand, I think the LAM is provide a useful and structured methodology to assess Thailand readiness for MSP. Its main benefit was to highlight strength and weakness in systematic way, which help us to identify priority action. And despite this challenge, the LAM process has been instrumental in guiding Thailand's MSP roadmap and aligning with national policy objective. So thank again for this wonderful project.
Thanks, Chanopon. So last but not least, Marines, if you can share the lessons learned from Brazil, the benefits and challenges to implement the RAM.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle. Well, I have to say that Brazil did more than a clear mapping of what we are doing. That's what we have, and the action plan. And the action plan, as you always say, is a wish list for guiding the future actions and financial needs. It was really great to see that during the whole process, representatives of different sectors and the government, they finally saw themselves in the MSC process and they committed to the whole thing. So it was great to see that during our discussions and workshops. And also it was a very important thing to put the spotlight on important issues that sometimes we knew, but they are not clear stated, like as we need more funding, we need more regional and sectorial integration, and urgently we need a framework for public participation and communication. So the process, due to the methodology, the process was really smooth to conduct. Of course, there are some challenges like, bringing everybody to the same table, and also to agree with the plan of action, because one thing is to develop the rapid assessment, and the other thing is to get people and government and sectors to agree and to commit with the action plan. But I think it was a great opportunity for Brazil to organize the process through this methodology. Thank you once more for your support on that.
Thank you, Marines. Actually, thank you all for your participation today, but especially for the big role that you all played as MSPglobal national focal points to implement the RAM in your countries. I would like to inform the audience that beyond these 5 countries, we are also implementing the RAM in other countries. So we will launch very soon the rapid assessment of Ghana, which was also part of MSPglobal 2.0. And we are finalizing the implementation of the RAM in Fiji, and we are in the middle of the process in South Africa, but also other countries in the pipeline, mainly through collaborations with other projects and partners to implement the RAM. So thank you to all our speakers. I would like to invite now the MSPglobal Communications Assistant, Asia Martin, to interact with the audience.
Hello, everyone. What an interesting panel this was. Now I have the pleasure of guiding you through the poll. So the first poll will have 2 questions. The first question being, what is the main continent of your MSP-related work? The second question is, which type of stakeholder are you? I will be launching the poll now. You should be seeing it now. I'll give you 1 minute to answer.
Ben, je n'arrive pas à cliquer dessus.
I'm afraid I'm not able to click on that.
Je clique, ça ne passe pas.
And when I click, nothing happens, says Alimata.
Technical issues and host and panelists cannot vote. I hope all the other participants are able to vote. Okay.
Asia, just 1 second. I see a comment on the chat that someone could not answer the second question. In this window of the Zoom poll, you need to scroll down to see the second question.
I see we have quite a few answers for question 1. Many of you are from Europe, many from Africa. Regarding question 2, many of you seem to be from the government. There are also some NGOs, private sector, many researchers. I hope everyone got to answer the first and the second question. Like Michelle said, also for next time, scroll down for the second question. I will be ending the poll, and I'll be sharing the results. Again, you might have to scroll down to see the results of the second question. Many thanks for everyone who participated in the poll. Regarding the publications that we just talked about in the panel of the MSPglobal RAM, I will be posting the links in the chat now. But let me also mention that all of the links will be in the MSPglobal newsletter that will be sent out tomorrow. So you will also have everything. And with that, I end this poll session, and I give the floor to my dear colleague.
Hi, Michelle. My video is disabled by the host. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Stačkutė from DG MARE, and I will be moderating this session. I'm glad to welcome you to the session to launch the new MSPglobal guidelines and good practices for maritime spatial planning practitioners. We have a very exciting all-female panel in here. First, Caterina Fonseca, the lead author of the new guidelines, will explore how MSP can be biodiversity inclusive and climate smart. Then Annette Schäfer, lead author of the data toolboxes, will guide us through spatial data infrastructure and ocean observation tools essential for the effective MSP. And finally, Vera Noon, a lead author of this publication, will discuss strategies for engaging the offshore wind sector in MSP. Each presentation will be around 15 minutes, and we will have a little bit of time for the Zoom poll at the end. We will start the session with the presentation of the 2 new volumes of the MSPglobal Guide. And Katerina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hello, everyone. So I would like to start by sharing, I think, how happy the MSPglobal team is to launch all these publications. In particular, for me, these 2 publications on recommendations on how to develop biodiversity inclusive and climate smart MSP. And as Julian mentioned earlier, these publications were only possible because of the generosity of a large set of contributors that shared their time, their knowledge with us, and enabled us to gather these recommendations. So a heartfelt thank you to all the contributors, especially those who are here with us today. I will start by giving you a bit of context on why we developed these publications on these 2 topics, and then I will introduce you to the actual publications. So I think that we all know, and it's increasingly recognized, the importance of the ocean, right? So the great diversity of species that it hosts, how it supports food webs, how it contributes with important geochemical cycles, oxygen production, carbon sequestration, and how it provides us with essential ecosystem services, right? So climate regulation, natural coastal defense, resources for all of us, and particularly for IPLCs and marine-based industries. And so, next. It's important to recognize its main role both for biodiversity maintenance and for climate change, or for climate regulation, and therefore for climate change action. Next. Unfortunately, we also know that we are now facing a climate and biodiversity crisis, right? So next. We know that we have problems with sea level rise, extreme weather events, ocean stratification, ocean acidification, and this, of course, also leads to problems for biodiversity, not only climate pressures, but also other human-derived pressures. And we end up with habitat destruction, reduction of connectivity, and overall population decline for many, many species. Next. To face this crisis, we know now that we have a plethora of global commitments, calls for action, but also at the regional level, not only at European, but also for the Pacific and for the African continent and others. And all this landscape of commitments and call for actions actually brings us new concepts or new calls for attention in thematic issues. Next. And so biodiversity inclusive and climate smart are 2 concepts that are increasingly important, or in these discussions and in these international commitments. Biodiversity inclusive actually comes from the Global Biodiversity Framework Target 1, where there's a call for all areas to be under participatory, integrated, and biodiversity inclusive spatial planning. And regarding the climate smart facing the effects of the climate change and having to deal with them, it has been a call for climate smart action and planning in different sectors, starting with the agriculture, but aquaculture, nature conservation, and also MSP, in terms of wanting to promote sustainability and also climate change adaptation and mitigation. Next. So these two topics, biodiversity protection, marine restoration, biodiversity inclusive if you want, and climate smart, were actually two of the 6 priority areas for the joint roadmap that guided MSPglobal 2.0. And one of the main areas of action of MSPglobal is knowledge support and capacity development, so knowledge transfer. Next. And one of the main tools that we have developed during MSPglobal projects phases was, as Kofi mentioned, the 2021 International Guide on MSP. So with that document, we wanted to assist governance and partners and practitioners to develop marine spatial plans, right? And at that point, we wanted to share the evolution and the lessons learned from different experiences. Of course, that it is very relevant document, but it was not able to capture all these new and challenging topics and pressures, right? So what we decided was to develop 2 complementary volumes, next, to the main guide, one on biodiversity inclusive principle and the other on the climate smart principle. So these are 2 complementary volumes to the main guide that if practitioners wish to deepen the focus on one of or both of these topics, they could have additional guidelines and recommendations to do so. Next. So for the scope of these 2 publications, we had to define what we understand by biodiversity inclusive MSP, and starting from the GBF definition and then discussing with all our contributors, we came up with this definition. So a biodiversity inclusive process would be one that will recognize that biodiversity is the foundation of sustainable development, clearly. Will set specific objectives within the MSP to achieve nature positive outcomes, that is essential, and will integrate biodiversity conservation and resilience concerns across all maritime activities that are within the scope of MSP. For the climate smart concept, it is already a well-established concept within the MSP world in terms of research and also some practice. And so we followed the established definition. So a climate smart MSP is one that integrates climate knowledge, incorporates flexibility to changing conditions. So that's one of the major elements, and also includes efforts for climate adaptation and mitigation. Next. So these recommendations were co-developed, as I mentioned, with 2 sets of contributors, practitioners, researchers, and the aim was to discuss and provide actionable steps to support all those parties involved in the process to be able to incorporate better these 2 concerns. So just very shortly, it was a process where we held workshops to discuss these topics. Contributors were also able to provide us recommendations through forms and provide us feedback on the drafting of these publications. And then we had external reviewers to help us also improve these documents. Next. So within the scope of these two publications, or each of the publications, we found that biodiversity inclusive MSP needs to be grounded in 4 key foundational elements. The first of which is, of course, a knowledge-based approaches that can help us understand better the biodiversity and ecosystem elements that we are dealing with, how they function, and how they are all connected. Second is to ground our vision in ocean resilience and sustainable blue economy. So the vision for the MSP needs to be really grounded in these 2 notions. It also needs to guarantee that biodiversity and ecosystem health is maintained and improved. And so it needs to include marine protection and restoration efforts or support those efforts. And of course, it needs to engage rights holders and stakeholders in the process so that it can be successful. Next. For the climate smart, and of course, these 2, as I mentioned before, these 2 topics are very well connected, right? And so for climate smart MSP to be possible, it needs biodiversity, right? It needs to ensure ecosystem health and the functioning of the marine environment that can support the other objectives. It needs to understand the system's interactions and dynamics, including cumulative impacts and the cascading effects of climate change, as well as other human-induced pressures, but how they impact the system. Then it needs to consider social knowledge, equity, and change. Again, it needs to be more inclusive in terms of as a process. And last but not least, it needs to align or contribute to the alignment of climate and marine policy. So it can really be a good platform to link and align the objectives of these 2 areas of policy. Next. So the guides, these 2 volumes are structured around the same phases or steps as the main guide, right? So they are really complementary, which means that one should not use the complementary volumes as standalones. You will find that the biodiversity inclusive will focus, of course, in recommendations to incorporate further biodiversity aspects. So it doesn't replace the recommendations on the main guide, and the same for the climate smart principle. Of course, that they will mention some common aspects or common elements like the importance of IPLCs, of traditional knowledge. They will have cross-cutting themes, but they will be more specific towards each of the length that we are approaching in each volume. Next. So what you'll find for each phase is a set of recommendations, right? And for each recommendation, you will find, as I give here an example, you'll find the rationale for that recommendation. Why is it important? What's the expected outcome of the recommendation, but also some suggested actions to help implement the recommendation. In some cases, you'll find also some additional tools that can help implement a recommendation or further reading sources. Next. And for some recommendations, you'll find case studies that highlight how important or how it was implemented in a specific country. And these were written by different contributors. On other cases, you'll find additional text boxes with additional information from other sources or from other publications of MSPglobal. So I hope that I entice you to actually use our publications, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katerina. And I have to say that having read both publications, I also want to entice everybody to read it because I find there are very good examples and good knowledge base. And just for information for our viewers that the MSP during the MSPglobal 3.0, Katerina will transform these guidelines into 2 training courses, one online at Ocean Teacher Global Academy and another one in person that the MSPglobal team will implement at regional level in 2026. Thank you, Katerina. And now we will proceed with the presentation of the first 2 volumes of the new series of MSPglobal data toolboxes. Annette, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening. It's my pleasure to present to you the 2 new data toolboxes from MSPglobal. Same as Katarina, I'm very happy to see these finally finished and about to be published. Also, huge thanks to all the contributors and collaborators, reviewers. Without you, all of this would not have been possible. So in this presentation, I will also give a bit of context for these data toolboxes and then talk you a little bit through each of these. So next slide, please. So the motivation behind these toolboxes is to make important data aspects more accessible to MSP practitioners. These 2 subjects, the spatial data infrastructure and ocean observation, are very important to support analysis about the current and the future conditions of the ocean and coastal areas. So our goal is to support MSP practitioners to use spatial data infrastructure and ocean observation for their MSP initiatives. So now just a few brief words about the process of how these toolboxes have come to life. We had first an extensive global expert mapping and then invited these experts to share their experiences and give us input. We organized 2 online workshops for brainstorming and get the expert input and feedback to our ideas. And then we developed the data toolboxes together in terms of writing, input, and then several review phases. Yeah, and that's now the end of that process where we have the final product in our hands. So what was important for us with these data toolboxes? It was very important not to produce a detailed technical cookbook about techniques and data. There's enough of that out there that many people are afraid to touch. So for us, it's important to provide a clear and easy to follow instructions and easy to understand explanations about these topics. Next slide, please. So these data toolboxes are really situated at the interface area of ocean science, planning and conservation on the one side, and data integration, use and management on the other side. And the results are these 2 beautiful documents that you can see on the right side of the slide, Volume 1 for the spatial data infrastructure and Volume 2 on ocean observation. That's coming soon. Next slide, please. So what exactly is a data toolbox? The overall goal is to make data accessible. It combines different technologies, approaches, systems, gives insights into software, good practices, and it showcases a variety of examples and case studies. So this box of tools and guidance is available to MSP practitioners to set up and use an SDI and integrate ocean observation, and which will then support the general MSP initiative. Next one, please. So in the data toolboxes, we have, of course, text sections, but also illustrations, tables and lists to compile information, boxes to highlight particular aspects or give tips, checklists to go through when setting up things. We also have a number of case studies from around the world to give you examples of different aspects of spatial data infrastructure or ocean observation use from current MSP initiatives. And we have included a number of flowcharts to compile and simplify the often complex processes into easier to digest overviews and steps to follow. Next slide, please. So now we go to the first data toolbox, the spatial data infrastructure for MSP. So we are walking through the important aspects in several chapters. The first chapter, so I have this in this little chart on the left side, how this publication is structured. The first chapter is about what you should keep in mind when preparing to set up your spatial data infrastructure. So before starting anything, what you have to think about, what you have to check, what you should set up to get ready. The next chapter is all about data for MSP, and then we move on to web architecture, then data security, privacy, and safety. Then we have one chapter about web architecture, one about the SDI governance and setup, and then in the end, the last chapter is about the monitoring, evaluation, and adaptation of the SDI. Next, please. So I'm going a bit more into details for each chapter now. What you can see here is the first chapter. That's about the preparations when you want to set up your SDI. And we have suggested a sequence of tasks to run through. You can see that in blue and in green, with a few suggested feedback loops that feed back into the process in orange. Next slide, please. So the next chapter is all about data. It's a quite big chapter, as you can imagine, and we have split it up into 3 sub-chapters. The first one is about data fundamentals, and we differentiate between subject data and metadata. That's often not very clear what's the difference, but it's very important to understand that and to include that properly in anything that has to do with data. So for SDI, spatial data infrastructure, it's very important to have that clear. So we talk about frameworks, categories, uncertainties, harmonization, and for the subject data and for the metadata, we explain a little bit what it is and why it is important, and then how to standardize them and how to make them discoverable and readable. Next slide. The second subchapter is about data architecture. So that's really the core of the spatial data infrastructure. So we cover geospatial data models and formats, database management systems, storage options, connectivity, interoperability, all these aspects. And here we have really made a big effort to produce graphics that make it easier to understand what we're talking about, and also give you an idea of the suggested processes. So how everything is linked together and how we would suggest you to approach this. Next, please. And the third chapter in the data, big chapter, is about good practices for data. So we talk about the FAIR and CARE principles, how to approach data management, quality control, for example, the versioning, clean data maintenance, consistency in data models used. And we also cover data accessibility and sharing under the good practices. So here on the right, you see again a graphical summary for the important aspects of good practices for data. Next slide, please. So this is the next chapter about web architecture. We talk about SDI connectivity and interoperability on local, national, regional, and global levels, and how to deal with growing data volumes, and also how to set up the web portal. So here on the right, you can see as an example, the graphic representation of the SDI connectivity to illustrate that how it should be connected on the different levels from local on the bottom up to global on the top, how you can connect your SDI and integrate that into the global ecosystem of SDIs. Next one, please. So the next chapter covers data security, privacy, and safety. This includes, of course, the subjects of data sensitivity, how to safely share data and build trust, that you're able to keep the data safe of contributors, and how to manage the sensitive data. And again, we have suggested a suggested sequence of steps to make your spatial data infrastructure secure and safe, which you can see in the graphic on the right. So of course, we have described everything in the text, but we have summarized it in these graphics and flowcharts to follow. Next slide, please. And the next chapter is about the governance and the setup of the SDI. So we talk about the policy framework, data management, again, data sharing, the communication, engagement, collaborations, and also the human resources involved in the SDI. And the last chapter covers monitoring, evaluation, and adaptation. So we suggest methods for M&E, how to establish the success criteria, for example, key performance indicators, and talk about how to evaluate and improve the SDI. Again, as this can be a quite long and complex process, we are offering a flowchart of steps to follow and checks to carry out to make this easier. Next slide, please. So now I move on to the second data toolbox about how to use ocean observation for MSP. So in this one, we are using the first data toolbox a little bit as a base reference, and we regularly link back to that data toolbox for more details on particular data-related aspects, so that we don't have to repeat ourselves or go too much into detail. So for those who would like to have more information, we have very clear links back to the SDI data toolbox. So we are starting with an overview of benefits of taking that extra step of integrating ocean observation into MSP, because that's an extra effort. So there has to be some clear benefits to that. So we are trying to highlight these in the beginning to give some motivation to go into depth of that. So for example, it's easier to precisely identify a suitable planning area when the ocean conditions can be included. The MSP should be more resilient as the ocean conditions are taken into account. And in general, it can lead to a more holistic MSP approach. Next slide, please. So in the first chapter of the second data toolbox, we give an overview of the ocean observation concepts, the techniques, platforms, and methods. So you can see the figure here that shows the different sampling platforms for ocean observation. Next one, please. We also talk about key initiatives in ocean observation. So the data collectors that collect the data, the aggregators on the next level, and then the coordinators that are coordinating the data dissemination, for example. And we give a list of example and access options for each of those. Next one, please. One aspect we are trying to emphasize is the concept of the bidirectional data flow. This is highlighted in orange here. So from these initiatives to the data users, down, but also back from the bottom to the top. So this is what you can see in orange. From the data users back into the system. So the MSP practitioners can also feed data into the system as important contributors. Next one, please. So the next chapter is about the data in ocean observation. We talk about key parameters and essential variables. Below you can see the essential ocean variables developed by Goose. We discuss data formats and go back to the subject of data system interoperability. This is one of the examples where we link back to the spatial data infrastructure toolbox. Next one, please. And we're coming back to the bidirectional data flow to and from the MSP practitioners and give detailed explanations about how data can be contributed. So we walk through this in detail at this example of contributing data to OBIS, as you can see here on the right. And again, we have provided a graphical representation to follow to make this as easy and as clear to understand and to follow as possible. Next one, please. So in the next chapter, we go more into detail about which ocean observation data is suitable and helpful for MSP initiatives. So it's one thing to know about the data in terms of formats and structure and data flow, etc. But it's equally important to discuss what the different indicators and data sets mean in the context of MSP and when it makes sense to use what. So we go from the raw ocean observation on the top, which can be complex and difficult to understand, through some data processing to get derived metrics, which can offer simplified and decision-ready information. And with that, we can then move on to data visualization, and which is then leading to the interpretation stage. So we have to reduce the data complexity and emphasize the creation of decision-ready information through that process. Next one. And in that context, we have compiled a detailed list of which ocean observation variable or derived metric is suitable for particular MSP tasks, which we hope will be helpful in selecting suitable data for each task or question. So we're trying to give you specific guidance for that, to disentangle the data and to know exactly what you should choose or suggest what you should choose for what task and what question. Next slide, please. In the next chapter, we go again into more practical details, this time how to integrate the ocean observation data into MSP, how to manage the hands-on steps. So we talk about good practices and data access via open data platforms. Next one, please. Here on the right, you see a graphical representation of different access options to data collected by the Argo floats as an example. We also talk about the importance of a solid SDI for data integration. And again, of course, linking back to the SDI data toolbox. Next one, please. And in the last chapter, we dive a bit into the future and talk about emerging trends in ocean observation. We give an overview of technical advances and what that means for data availability and resolution. We talk about digital twins of the ocean. A few of those are currently in development and will certainly play an increasingly important role in the future. Next. Big data and AI will also be relevant for ocean observation and MSP. We give an overview of potential future developments of AI integration and how that might impact the outputs and planning processes. Another important point is future enhanced global cooperation in ocean monitoring and MSP, and of course, climate change and the different scenarios on the table. We also cover emerging industries as potential future ocean observation contributors, for example, offshore wind farms, and the need to establish the clear data sharing protocols in that context. Next one, please. So in conclusion, our aim is to support the MSP practitioners with their data management and integration, and to make this as easy and accessible as possible. The data toolboxes will be open access resources with access via the UNESCO digital library and via a dedicated website hosting an online version. So that's two parallel access options for you. So yeah, please stay tuned for that. And we hope that many of you will use these resources and that this will open up the area of how to use data in your MSP initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. It seems that it's enormous work that you have done on this not very easy topic. And for listeners, the MSPglobal 3.0, Annette will also transform these guides in online and in-person training courses. And we can move to the last but not least presentation in this session for the two publications about how to improve the engagement of the offshore wind sector in MSP. These documents are jointly published with UN Global Impact. Vera, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I think I will start by echoing my colleagues from the MSPglobal team. We are really happy to see these publications come to life and be online. It was a lot of work, but I think it will be worth it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Next slide, please. So I will briefly go over the context. Why is this important? Why is this publication important? What was the process of co-creation of these two publications? And a quick overview on the content, but of course you will get to dive deeper on the online versions. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, so we've all been witnessing a growing offshore wind energy expansion, and this is largely due to the climate targets being set globally and linked to the UNFCCC recommendations. And the objective of these publications was to provide guidelines for both MSP practitioners and offshore wind experts on how offshore wind can be integrated into MSP processes. And we will see why MSP is important for this global process. Next slide, please. So this was a co-creation process. It was not our work. It was the collaboration of multiple contributors. And it started out with expert dialogues after identifying experts from both offshore wind and MSP practitioners. And later we had joint workshops in which joined both teams, let's say. And this work was supported by the input from the MSP Forum that took place in October 2024 in Bali. And once we had developed draft publications, they were subjected to consultation process by those same experts. Next slide, please. So starting with the expert dialogues, we first had two different groups. First, the MSP and strategic environmental assessment practitioners, because obviously this is a big part of the work that we do. And then we had two different meetings for offshore wind experts in order to have greater representability. And we collected a lot of input through Miro boards. Next slide, please. Next. So basically, each of these two groups were subjected to a series of questions and conversations, and we tried to understand their challenges, the conflicts, the synergies, but also what they would like the other team or group of experts to know. And based on that, we developed a lot of the content. We also collected references and sources that were important for us for the literature review and the development of the content. Next slide, please. And then we later grouped these two group of experts together into a dialogue, and they were able to exchange directly. And we were also able to collect information and recommendations based on the 6-step process of marine spatial planning. Next slide, please. So next. So the two publications, well, it started out at one initially, but as we started having conversations with a different expert, we realized that we would like to have first a basic concept development, because a lot of the MSP experts do not know what offshore wind sector entails in practice, in technical terms. So we started off with that. And then we had the volume 2, which was focusing more on the recommendations, on the good practice. So I will quickly skim through these two publications. The first volume went over basic concepts, regulatory and legal frameworks, technical and spatial considerations, which are particularly important for MSP experts in order to know what does the sector need spatially. Also, of course, trying to understand the impacts of the offshore wind sector, be it positive or negative. And finally, the spatial interactions with other maritime sectors, which is obviously one of the basis steps of the MSP process. The key, next slide, please. The key takeaways was really the importance to consider the 3-dimensional aspect of the sector. So both vertically and horizontally, understanding the implication on the spatial, on the coastal and the marine space. The second thing was understanding what assessment tools do we have for social and environmental impacts. So there are different assessment tools that are available on throughout the offshore wind cycle. And finally, really the importance of adapting to the evolving policy landscapes, because we are seeing that climate targets are changing. So planners need to adapt accordingly. We also obviously demonstrated that MSP can facilitate the coexistence with existing uses and activities. So volume 2, next slide, please. Volume 2 really looked into the challenges that were faced, why there was not enough engagement to begin with, and provided first overarching recommendations, so really cross-cutting recommendations for biodiversity, for data, for planning in general. And then there was a deeper dive into each phase of the MSP process, and really throughout each phase, what can be done to integrate better the offshore wind sector. Key takeaways, next slide, please. Key takeaways were really we're understanding how MSP can support offshore wind by aligning with policies, facilitating cross-sectoral coordination, reducing spatial conflicts, and accelerating offshore wind permitting processes. And the challenges were related to governance, quality, data availability, public engagement, and data sharing. Next slide, please. The overarching recommendations addressed MSP's role throughout different steps of the offshore wind development, the role of stakeholder engagement, early, continuous, and adapted, and the environmental considerations through mitigation hierarchy, nature-based solutions, and nature-inclusive design. And the recommendations by MSP phase, I will let you discover that in the publications. What I wanted to highlight is that we did provide different case studies from around the world. We tried to achieve representativeness, global north and global south, but obviously there were some imbalances that we still need to solve. And finally, I am very happy that a lot of the content aligns with the work of my colleagues on biodiversity, data, climate smart. So hopefully all of these publications will be working together to help you practitioners achieve your work. So thank you very much, and we would be happy to hear your comments on the publications.
Thank you very much, Vera, for your presentation and all your support in MSP Global 2.0. In the next phase of MSP Global, the team will develop a similar work, but on the aquaculture sector. And with this, we end the session, and I would like to invite the MSP Global Communication Assistant, Asia Martin, to interact with the audience. Thank you very much.
Everyone, let's do another poll together. Questions for you. Which of these products will be the most useful for your work? Most needed to improve your MSP capacity? Launch the to also scroll down for the second question, and I'll give you a minute. Few more seconds. All right. Let's have a look at the results. All publications and regarding the skills, there's also a good balance. That's great. Many of you have been asking for the links to the publications. I will share them now in the newsletter. I'm also a lucky one to announce the break, a 5-minute break for 11:35:34. Have a nice break.
Hello, welcome back to our event. I hope you had the time to stretch yourself, get some coffee, some water, and prepare yourselves for our next and second half of the event. My name is Natalia Solis Miranda, and I am the MSP Global Regional Expert for Latin America and the Caribbean. And today's moderator for session 4, Setting the Sail to MSP Global 3.0. This session is an opportunity to give a sneak peek of what's coming with the activities at both the global and regional levels. For starters, the MSP Global 3.0 initiative will focus on co-developing at global level the Volume 4 of MSP Global Guide on Land Sea Interaction Principle, Volume 3 of MSP Global Data Toolbox on Cumulative Impact Assessment, Volume 4 of MSP Global Data Toolbox on Spatial Scenarios, and Basic Concepts and Good Practices on Engaging Aquaculture and Sector in MSP, as it was mentioned earlier. So during today's session event, we invited 2 MSP experts to talk about some of these topics. I would like to introduce Potlako Kathy, who is a leader in the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment in South Africa, focusing on spatial planning and climate change. And the other panelist that we have today in our session is Maren Kruse, a marine scientist in the Marine Spatial Management Group headed by Vanessa Stenson-Müller at Thunen Institute of Sea Fisheries in Germany. We would like to thank you both for accepting our invitation and for sharing your knowledge and experience. So this panel is, we prepared two questions that we would like our experts to address. And the first question is, how would you describe and convince the audience about the relevance of your topic? In this case, Potlako will tell us about the land sea interaction, and Maren will talk about scenarios for MSP. Please, Potlako.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. I think the question is quite tricky. You know, when you have to convince people, it's so hard. But I take it that we appreciate the fact that the IOC UNESCO has actually noted that in the next phase of the MSP Global, such a concept such as the land sea interface are quite unique and important in making sure that they could actually be able to support processes around MSP and so forth. I think what is important that we need to note is that there is a connection between the land and there's a connection between the sea. That interaction it's always important, and often people refer it to either the land-ocean interaction or the land-sea interaction. But importantly is that it's just the influence of each other at the boundary level. And one thing that we need to note is that the interface, it's actually important for both as well, for MSP particularly, and also for integrated coastal management as well. There are those member states that still enforces MSP as part of integrated coastal management, and there are those that still actually facilitate MSP as part of ocean governance as well. So the importance around it is that particularly when you're looking at the 3 aspects of why is it important to infuse LSI within the MSP, it's because you have to deal with the physical interaction, you have to deal with the chemical interaction, you have to deal with the biological interaction as well. And most importantly, again, is to make sure that the climate change and the human influence within that space, because particularly you want to deal with how conflicts actually arise from a point of the different activities and how you can be able to manage the coastal ecosystems as well. And I like the fact that I think it was also emphasized by, in the previous session, it was emphasized by Marinez, I think, from Brazil, she also stated categorically that integration of MSP and ICM is quite important because of the connection and how we need to deal with the interface space. One thing that people need to understand is that the scale at which you are actually undertaking such processes is important, and how others actually looks at MSP from a larger scale and others looks at MSP from a small scale area-based side in terms of understanding what do they need to deal with. When one start applying their mind around the concept around MSP from ocean planning and zoning, few things that we need to step back and we have to actually understand is what informed your principles around the type of zonation and planning that you want to take. Are you actually concerned about ecosystem-based approach? Are you concerned about integration and coordination? Are you concerned about the sustainability element of your ocean space, or is it a strategic and forward-looking a specific plan? Is it flexible and adaptive to climate conditions as well? So there's a broad pool of principles that one needs to actually infuse. And particularly each country will take MSP, particularly from what they would like to actually see and manage within their ocean space. Others may want to actually untap even the unknown economies as well of the ocean. Others may want to preserve some sensitive areas that still need to actually be able to deal with ecotourisms and so forth. So it's about what the country plan is when it comes to the issues of MSP. Lastly, I think one thing that we need to also be able to look at is that from the type of scale that you are looking at when you are looking at the MSP, the more you come closer to the nearshore and the coastal spaces, it's where you find a lot of conflict. And one of your process for MSP is to actually deal with the actual conflict because of the multi-use sectors that are actually in that space. Yes, the more you go into the high seas and so forth, it's quite lesser for a few stakeholders to engage with and sectors as well. But where the near zone is where you deal with a lot of issues that we need to actually be able to manage. And I think it's important that we note that it will be incomplete of anybody that is undertaking the MSP process without considering that the land-sea interface, what happens from the land to the sea and what happens from the sea to the land are quite an integrate part of what we want to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Marine. You're muted.
Yes, the typical one.
Marlene is
Okay,
muted, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia, and greetings to all from Germany. I hope you can hear me okay now. And now I will come to a very different topic. That's the scenario analysis. So I'm an ecological modeler working in marine spatial planning. And I believe that one of our biggest challenges is not really the present, but the future. The context in which we make planning decisions is very complex. We have many stakeholders with often competing interests, but it's also very dynamic and very uncertain what the future will bring with climate change or the political shifts, changing human behavior. And all this create a future that's quite unpredictable. So yet we need to make decisions now that might become marine policies and last for decades or years at least. So, and this is where I think scenarios come in and where they're very useful. So scenarios are basically plausible stories about how the future might unfold, but also how we would like to see it unfold maybe. And they often start as a qualitative narrative, and we build them from the most important driver of the system under consideration. But we can also then quantify them with data or models like habitat maps, species distribution models, climate projections. And this gives us a very structured way and data-driven way to deal with the future uncertainty. And once we've built these narratives or data-driven scenarios, we can analyze them. To me, it's a bit like a stress test of our planning ideas. So we can make trade-offs visible, and we can show the consequences of different events or also policy choices and how this might unfold in our system. And for example, in our current project, the EU project Marine Plan,
we have developed different hypothetical scenarios where we have different management schemes with high versus low climate change mitigation. And then we evaluate how this will affect the allocation of marine protected areas. So where will they be? And this, of course, can impact their effectiveness. And then we can see how we can transport this back to the real world examples. Beyond this analysis, I think scenarios are also a very, very good tool for stakeholder communication. We can co-develop the narratives together with the stakeholders, and then we can create a shared perspective of the future that's most likely or the future we want. And we also, by this, have kind of a common language to also make an understanding or better understanding between the different stakeholders. And that can also facilitate the discussions in quite complex planning processes. So another advantage of this co-creation is that you also strengthen the acceptance of the future planning decisions. So they are most likely or more likely willing to accept what's coming. And I think I heard someone saying that not everyone was happy with it, but they can live with it. So maybe you might not get the ideal outcome for everyone, but maybe everyone says, I can live with that. And that's a big achievement already. So yeah, in summary, I would say that scenario analysis can help to make MSP more forward-looking and also more adaptive. And it's a great way to understand our trade-offs and maybe also the implications of different policy choices we might want to make. And given how uncertain the future is, if we look at the political situations worldwide at the moment, I think every MSP process should try it. And in my opinion, it can also be very engaging and very fun. So to come up with scenarios, how might the world be developed and what would I like? What would be the worst case? I think it can be really engaging. So thank you.
Thank you both for your interventions. Actually, the fact that we have to consider everything as a whole overview is very important, because at the end, what we are actually planning in this case is the ocean, and the ocean is only one.
Yeah.
So our next question for you both is, what are the key concepts and practices related to these topics that MSP practitioners and stakeholders should be aware of? Botlako, please.
Yeah, just to also be able to reflect as well where the key concept and practices. Probably it's also good to actually align it with the pilot work that we are undertaking currently. We literally been engaging in a process of trying to look at the small scale MSP within a particular province in South Africa. And those are area based because they are more towards the coast, and also looking at the participatory of communities and their socio-economic activities, and also how they benefit from the ocean as well, because those are the drivers that we want to see, that is there benefit from the type of planning that we're doing in the context of MSP to communities, and also to supporting the local authorities as well. So there's a pilot project that we're doing with 4 different municipalities. 3 are district, and 1 is actually a metropolitan municipalities. And what has gone into it was just investing more on understanding the socioeconomic dynamics of both the municipalities and the communities as well, and to try and look at the priorities that will be important when it comes to the two-way approach, and also to try come up with the area-based plan. The principles that we had to look at is whether these plans are going to be integrated within MSP or within integrated coastal management. And part and parcel of it was, it needs to be a stakeholder-driven process. It's not just a stakeholder engagement, but you need to get buy-in from stakeholders so that they understand the type of intervention that you want to actually be able to provide to them, and how they will be able to support and be able to benefit as well from it. And the aspect of integration and coordination was actually important, because we are dealing with tools that particularly are embedded more on the boundaries. You have stakeholders stakeholders that are more coastal, you have stakeholders that are more ocean-based. And it's always about how do you bring them together into one space and be able to deal with the entire coordination that you want to deal with. Let's not forget that most of the time, such committees or stakeholders are actually described in policies and laws, so they might be limiting. The question is, how do you bridge that gap so that you can get more people invested and be able to do more? And also, importantly, is that how do you get the data that you need and the information that you need? The more limited information you have, it's actually going to compromise your ability to actually have a broader plan that actually encompasses everything. It's about how you get everything. And the fact that you need to actually start looking at what are the adaptive management that you need to bring to this to the fore as well. Because with such things, MSP and LSI, you are dealing with important two aspects of things. Is it either a spatial context of what you are dealing with, or it's a temporal scale as well? How do you get to deal with the MSP or LSI that is going to be that is going to be at a temporal scale? Because now you have other things to deal with, from a small scale, medium scale, to actually large scale, where you need to infuse your climate change, where you need to infuse other things that are important. And one thing that has been an eye-opening as well is that this process is actually a two-way process, because you have the connection of the land and the sea, then you have the interface as well of the sea and the land. All the processes that happens in between, you need to have a lens around how the system actually works together. Interconnectedness of the uniqueness of the system is quite important, because you have to understand the system. And also, when you're looking at the cross-sectoral units that you have to deal with, from fisheries to transports to aquaculture to urban planning to tourism, to infrastructure, where you need to deal with sea cables and other things, linking with MPAs. So it becomes one of a network that you need to understand how the interdependencies actually work within that space, because nobody wants to compromise their mandate and the sector opportunities that come with it. But the problem is that we need to deal with space in such a way that it's coordinated and integrated, so that we can be able to realize the sustainable oceans economy that we want to actually be able to do. And also the other thing that is important that we must not be able to forget about it is the socio-ecological system as well. How the human activities actually impact on the ecosystem, because that's what one of the things that we need to deal with in most cases. And I think with that, I think it will be one of the products that we would like to actually see coming out in the next phase as well, because at least we could be able to stand here and say there are models that we've managed to test, and those are the models that we want to also be able to contribute to the IOC UNESCO as well, to say when we are going into the next phase of the MSP Global 3, then we can actually be able to start being able to bring them together, package them into a much more readable product as well, so that we can actually be able to share with the rest of the world as well. Because what is important is how to demonstrate that what you did locally can be replicated as well in any other areas, because we don't work as an island, we work as an ecosystem, and we work as partners as well in the space that we are at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marine. So now I remembered to unmute myself. So yeah, when it comes to the key concepts and practices of scenarios, I think I already touched upon most of them, but I think I would like to highlight 4 things that I believe are particularly important. And the first is maybe the concept of plausibility. It's important to keep in mind that scenarios are not predictions of one most likely future, but it wants to explore the range of things that's plausible. So the value for planners here is that you really can test our plans, or the one plan we think of we want to implement, and then see in a possible setting how this would unfold, and then make our decisions more future-proof and more forward-looking. And I think the second is that relates a bit to what Laco also hinted on, is that we build scenarios around key drivers of change, and identifying these key drivers, whether it's related to climate, economics, or politics, is the foundation of all the scenario work. But agreeing on these key drivers is not always straightforward, especially if you have a social ecological system, which we most likely work on. It's very complex. And also, if you integrate the views of different stakeholders, they might have very different ideas of what is important. So I think identifying the key drivers and then build the scenarios from there is already a quite challenging step. And that's, again, where this co-development aspect comes in. So I think it's very, very important. And scenarios will be most powerful if they're not just written by the experts for the stakeholders, but with the stakeholders together. So we can make sure we integrate the local knowledge. And that might be sometimes different from what we as experts presume about a system. And then also this helps create this sense of ownership. And I think it also relates to what Laco hinted on, the gaps between the different sectors and their perspectives. So I think that's a very good step to create that ownership for different groups of stakeholders. And in terms of practice, I would like to highlight the value of iterative structured workshops. So not only for building the narratives, but also, and I think that's a step that's sometimes missed for communication, for communicating the results. So the iteration is very important because the analysis, the scenario analysis or development is not a one-time event. It's more like a process where you first start with identifying the key drivers. But then based on the feedback, you might want to refine, or as new data become available, you also can refine this narratives. And then I think it's very important to play back what you get in the end and verify with the stakeholders what they think. And another thing that's very important here is, I think, the visualization. So it's very important to have a good way of showing the results. Like ideally, you have a map or something that everyone can relate to. So the trade-offs are everyone is being able to grasp the implications, and then this really can facilitate the subsequent discussions. So I think for me, the key here is to see scenarios not just as the storyline, but more as an iterative and participatory process. Thank you.
You both touch very important details about what we need to consider, we must consider when we're planning and doing the integration of all the aspects that need to be related to MSP. One thing, just to have a little space, but in one word, how would you summarize the importance of MSP in land interaction and in scenarios? Just one word, like the first one.
The only way to facilitate a sustainable oceans economy is through the integration of both integrated coastal management, land sea interaction, and marine spatial planning as one system. Thank you.
So I think that's very hard. I would pick future-proof. So I think for me, scenarios would make us more forward-looking and be able to make, in the uncertain future we have ahead of us, the most future-proof versions of our policies.
Great. So integration, future-proof. Those are the keywords. Thank you very much to both of you for your initial ideas about the what the MSPglobal team should consider when developing these new products on LSI and scenarios. I would like to invite again the MSPglobal Communications Assistant, Elisa Martin, to interact with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Another poll together. This time, only one question. Which of these upcoming products are you interested in? Launching the poll now. Now. I'll give you a bit of time. This is very entertaining to watch. All products seem to be very popular. Okay, I'm getting a few last answers, but I think everybody voted now. I'm ending the poll. Let's have results. Hey, all products seem to be very popular, but the very most guide on land sea interaction, it seems. That's great. I give the floor to my dear colleague now. Thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you, Asia. I think it's interesting, quite interesting to see how many of us are actually interested in the data product and land sea interaction. So I believe that this will also guide the next steps of the MSPglobal program. And for this session, we are now going to talk about ongoing and planned MSPglobal work at the regional and the national levels. So, and for the interaction, we have a number of speakers. So, and for Africa, we call on Ibukun Adewumi, who is the head of the IOC subcommission, that's IOC Africa. We call on Wenzizu as the head of the IOC subcommission for Asia and Pacific, that's the Westpac. And we also have Marco Tosig, who is the program specialist at the IOC Caribe, I'm coming. And he will be acting, or he will be addressing on behalf of Lorna Innis, who is actually the head of the IOC subcommission of the IOC Carib, that is the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So, and for this panel, we have heard from the previous sessions about the specific national experiences with regards to MSP, and I will be quite interested in knowing what are the most immediate MSP-related needs and challenges in your respective regions. So I will call on our panelists to switch on their camera, and I think the question will first go to Mr. Ibukun Adewumi of IOC Africa. So you have the floor, Mr. Ibukun.
All right. Thank you very much, Kamdum, for that question. And before I actually go straight into answering that, I want to give it a bit of a context of what is actually happening in the region. Many thanks to some of my colleagues here from Togo, from Benin, from Cote d'Ivoire, that have already laid a bit of a context. But the region is not just, I mean, we're not just talking about the ocean. We're talking about a region where the ocean is also a source of livelihood, a source of identity, and even a source of culture, and a path to what I would call climate resilience. But today, what we are seeing is that the way we manage the ocean, we are managing it in a kind of half-closed eye, because some of the marine activities are really multiplying in the region. We have fishing, I mean, looking at the traditional ocean sectors, and possibly now the emergence of the emerging ocean sector. But in most cases, the operation is actually done not in the spatial vision. And this is really creating real tension in the region. But the most immediate challenge that we face, from the experience that we've had and from the IOC Africa perspective includes some sort of limited technical capacity to actually generate and use spatial data. Somehow fragmented institutional mandates, something that is really coming up, and also lack of inclusive stakeholder engagement, especially from local communities and small-scale fishers and women. Moreover, we've seen some progress, though this progress kind of uneven across the continent. We have seen marine spatial planning really flying in countries like Seychelles, now in Kenya, some traction in South Africa, in Angola, in Namibia, and in some of these Western African countries. But developing MSP framework and integrated ocean policies are also something that is coming up in many other countries. But we still lack basic baseline data, including decision support tools and cross-sectoral coordination. And without this, ocean use decisions are reactive rather than strategic, and that will severely hamper sustainable development. Again, the deeper issue is that MSP is still conceived or perceived in some quarters as a project or some sort of donor-driven tool rather than a transformative governance approach. And that must change. That is what we've been advocating. That must change. We need MSP that is actually legally anchored, MSP that is politically supported and also socially owned by the communities, by the stakeholders, and not just by the ministries or by coastal communities themselves. Again, I want to be very clear here that there is an opportunity. There are a lot, in fact, a huge window of opportunity here. With the growing interest in blue economy sectors and also the emergence of national ocean policies, we are seeing increasing climate risks and converging that are really converging into real issues. And of course, the momentum is also increasing for how to profile solutions to this. So if we can get MSP right now, we can anchor all of these successes in an African reality and something that is driven by African leadership. And we can also lay the foundation for a future where our ocean is used wisely and also shared fairly and ultimately sustained for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bukun. It's quite interesting. I think you've made well to highlight some of these challenges and also the advances in the region. Of course, some of it is, I would say that it could be perceived as very sad, that as you said initially, that we have a kind of half-closed eye when it comes to talking about the ocean management or governance in our countries, where we have MSP being still perceived, as the stage of a project, not something that could actually be beneficial for the communities. So, and maybe I will just quickly turn to Wendy to actually tell us what happens, in the case of Westpac. So, Wendy, the floor is to you, please.
Thank you, Joe. I think in our region, I think the Asia, since 21st century, the Asia was considered as a growth engine of the global economy. So the region is very much marked by dense population, I think a rapid coastal development, and particularly very much high dependence on ocean for food and also economic growth. So in our region, I think there are a lot of, I think, immediate MSP-related needs and also challenges. So from my perspective, and also I think from a regional perspective, I think three immediate needs, I think, stood out. That include, I think, the governance and the policy needs, because many countries in the region still lack clear legal and institutional support for marine spatial planning, and also as well as the effective mechanism, particularly at the national level, provincial level, to address the competing sectoral interests. So second, I think the challenge would be, I think would be same thing as my colleagues working in Africa, or about the technical and the capacity development needs. I think in our region, I think there are significant gaps in marine and coastal data, and also limited integrated data management system to support the science-based, evidence-based planning and the decision-making process. And more importantly, I think we need a lot of localized expertise to adapt the global international guide and practice to the regional and national and even local context. So we need a lot of a tailored training program to enhance our local expertise in marine spatial planning process and also toolkit development. So last but not least, I think I would say this region also need a more strengthened, sustained the cooperation mechanism, which can drive forward the MSP development over the time to facilitate knowledge sharing and also to establish a very good, strong, and sustainable ocean practitioner network. I think engaging all stakeholders to share their experience and solutions. So that's like, I think this is something I think I could share with about the immediate region-specific needs and the challenges in the region. So to address those needs, I think in very much, I think close collaboration with our MSPglobal 2.0 and also all member states in the region, we have tried to adopt a more strategic and holistic approach to marine spatial planning development in this region. So we have set up, the regional group expert. We have developed many training opportunities and also working together with several, I would say, leading MSP countries in the region, and also working together very closely with the MSPglobal 2.0, conduct the training workshop with a focus on the rapid assessment methodology and other themes, I think key themes. We also put several demonstration sites in the region and initiate UN actions to accelerate the marine spatial planning. But of course, I think, there's still a long way to go. I think in our region, the current efforts or progress were not made from scratch, but built on many, I think, achievement and the experience of member states and also MSPglobal project. So I think in the future, I think we are still very much looking forward to working very closely with the MSPglobal 3.0 and all stakeholder and national international partners to further strengthen our technical capacity and also institutional capacity to advance the marine spatial planning in the region. So thank you very much, Joe. I give the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I think it's quite appealing. It's quite appealing, right, to actually see that we have two regions facing the same challenges, like governance capacities, having, all the communities being equipped, with the knowledge, being engaged, in the processes and so. But you have already also touched one of a few points about in line with the question that I was about to really ask, but maybe we're going to come back on it in a few seconds. But and that question is, I'm looking at the fact that now we are actually selling, the sale of MSPglobal 3.0, and I'm wondering, if you could be willing to share with the audience what, in terms of activities, your respective subcommissions is actually doing in the field of MSP to support the member states, and also how MSPglobal has actually supported, to your knowledge, and could also further support some of these activities in your region, specifically, when it comes to supporting the member states. Maybe I will come back. I will turn to Ibukun first before going back to Wendy.
All right. So thank you very much for that question. And of course, I would like to put it this way. So the IOC Africa Secretariat and the MSP Global team, I can say we are Siamese twins. You know, we've been working together for a number of years to advance marine spatial planning in the region. But what we are doing concretely as a subcommission is that we are helping our member state to move from fragmented sectoral management to a sort of integrated, forward-looking ocean governance that is actually anchored on science, on equity, and regional ownership. So we support our member states through three interconnected pillars. And first of those pillars is related to capacity development. So through some of the partnership that we've been having, also including partnership with the Ocean Teacher Global Academy and the MSP Global team, we've been able to train dozens of professionals across Africa, equipping them with the tools, the method, and the policy framework that they need to implement marine spatial planning. But we don't just stop at training. We are also helping countries to develop marine spatial planning roadmap. We are helping countries to establish national stakeholders platform and also draft enabling, assist or contributing into drafting national priorities for marine spatial planning. And again, we are also coordinating two marine spatial planning technical expert group, one for the Nairobi Convention in collaboration with our colleagues from UNEP, Nairobi Convention Secretariat on for the Western Indian Ocean, and again for the Atlantic side of Africa in collaboration with our colleagues from the Abidjan Convention. Secondly, we are also improving or enhancing our data infrastructure. So through what we've built as an ocean node for the ocean data information systems, we are building open access platforms that brings together different data about ocean variables, including bathymetric, ecological, and socioeconomic data. So we know that without this data, MSP will become a guesswork, and we don't want this to happen. So we are closing that gap. We're ensuring that Africa countries can make special decisions based on evidence and not just assumption. Thirdly, we are working on policy alignment and regional dialogue. For example, IOC Africa is aligning MSP effort with the African Union Blue Economy Strategy and also some of these high-level policy documents in the region. So while also convening regional dialogue. So in many of our exchanges, particularly if you look back to the IOC Africa session that we just had in June, we had some decisions on marine spatial planning and sustainable ocean plan, but are also moving this work beyond the regional scope. We are actually building some sort of routes. For example, in Comoros, we have just supported the development of the publication of National MSP Roadmap, which is a major achievement for the small island developing states, which also is going to give immense ocean territory and complex ocean governance needs to the country. In Kenya, in Tanzania, in Madagascar, we just collaborated with the Swedish government and our colleague from SWAM to produce studies that dig deep into examining the intersection between marine spatial planning and gender and even poverty. So these are not just peripheral issues that we're dealing with as it relates to marine spatial planning. They are just central to the development and advancement of this as an approach to sustainable ocean management. Because if MSP is to work for Africa, it must work for all Africans, especially the most vulnerable. And again, we are starting to enter a new frontier in the way that we conceptualize and develop MSP in practice. Now we are starting to develop a regional methodology to integrate ocean accounting into marine spatial planning. So this work is actually rooted in socioeconomic and longitudinal data. This will also allow countries not to only plan where activities happen, but also to evaluate their value, to cost, and also contribute sustainably to the well-being of the people. So these are some of the areas that we are working on, and we believe that with the intervention that we are making on the continent, MSP will become a game changer for the countries and will be integrated directly into national development processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikona. I think there is a lot that's being done, and I strongly believe that having all this coming to full reality will definitely ensure us of the success of the African Union Agenda 2063. So, and I can just move to Wendy to maybe hear from him too.
Yeah, just a very short. I think, IOC, I think a regional mechanism, play a very key role in bridging the gap between the global objective and the national action, even local actions. And MSP is fundamentally our national responsibility. I think fundamentally, because since it involves deciding how to allocate and regulate the use of marine space within a country jurisdiction water in most cases. So that means, most of MSP framework laws and enforcement are ultimately country-driven. So the subcommission actually, I think we couldn't replace the national authority, but instead we provide support, enable country and empower country to implement MSP in their whole socio-economic development agenda. So that's why we took a very strategic and also holistic approach to MSP in the region by empowering all member states, no matter, the disparities, capacity disparities, and also the MSP development stage varying from one country to another. So working together with the MSPglobal, I think we have done a tremendous progress in the past, I think as I mentioned earlier, and also all those efforts have finally culminated into the recent development of our regional action framework for MSP from 2025 to 2030, which has already been adopted by member states in March of this year. So our future efforts working together, I think particularly with all partners, with our countries, and also with our MSPglobal, will be centered around how we are going to implement the regional action framework for the marine spatial planning, which already identify 4 key areas of actions. So knowledge support, capacity development, stakeholder engagement, awareness remain as one of the 4 area actions, one key area of action. So I think in this field, there are huge room for us to further developing, working very closely with the global MSP 3.0, particular, to how to adapt, how to apply the thematic tool, those kind of toolkit, and also manuals to our regional, even national context through the regional collaboration framework and also the demonstration site we have established under the framework of UN Decadal Actions. So this is something I think there are a lot of things are in our plan. I think we will always keep a positive and also optimistic attitude to welcome impress all the opportunities that we could provide or we could generate for our member states in the region in order to support and empower our member states to accelerate their MSP process at a national, provincial, and also local level. So this is some, our thinking and also planning. So in conclusion, I think the region is very unique, as I mentioned, because we face a lot of challenges from economic developments as an engine, as I said, for global economic growth, but also face a lot of encouraging how to sustain our ecosystem service. So we need a lot of good practice and the support, and also really we can find our unique way that is suitable for the region, the future socio-economic development, ecological, social, and also economic development. So this is something I think I want to, have this kind of a conclusion for our future hope and collaboration with our MSPglobal 3.0, with all colleagues as well, partners. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Anyway, I think personally, I would say that I'm happy to notice that in your positive and optimistic journey, you also identified the tremendous progress that you've actually accomplished so far with the MSP Global. So I want to thank you, Ebukun and Wendy, and just know that it's been a pleasure for the MSP Global team to actually support the IOC subcommissions. And but we've not heard from the IOC Carib because due to the time zone difference. So Lorna, who is, as I said initially, the head of the IOC subcommission for the IOC Carib, was not able to join us live today. So, but we have actually been able to capture a pre-recorded message from Marco Tosik, who is the program specialist at the IOC Carib. So he will tell us about their own MSP activities in the wider Caribbean region. So maybe we can play the video from Marco, please.
Hello, my name is Marco Tosik, representing EU Caribe, the subcommission for the Caribbean and adjacent regions of IOC UNESCO. Today I will present to you the activities we are currently carrying out on marine spatial planning here in the Caribbean region. MSP is a central element of EU Caribe's current biennial work plan, figuring prominently among the 14 recommendations of EU Caribe's recent 18th Intergovernmental meeting. These activities in our work plan span training opportunities for MSP processes and economic valuations, as well as tools for ecosystem-based management and sustainable ocean planning. A major opportunity to accelerate this agenda has been the UNDP-GEF UNOPS Pro-Caribe Plus project, within which EU Caribe has been tasked with leading MSP activities across the region as part of a 3-year agreement between UNOPS and UNESCO. Pro-Caribe Plus aims to protect and restore the ocean's natural capital, build resilience, and support region-wide investments for sustainable blue economy. Through Pro-Caribe Plus, we are scaling up actions on marine spatial planning across the wider Caribbean. Following recommendation 3 of EU Caribe's recent IGM, we are establishing a task team on marine spatial planning nested within our working group on capacity development. This task team will provide direct support for regional capacity development activities and will ensure that lessons learned from country experiences are shared across the wider Caribbean. We are also working on 2 national MSP processes as part of Pro-Caribe Plus in collaboration with MSPglobal and national agencies. In Colombia, we are developing an MSP process for Cartagena Bay, while in the Dominican Republic, 2 MSPs are planned, both at the large scale of its exclusive economic zone and at a finer scale, high priority area. Capacity development is at the core of IO Caribe's mandate. Together with MSPglobal and Pro-Caribe Plus, we are preparing new MSP-related training workshops on biodiversity, climate, and data in 2026. We are also organizing exchange visits between MSP sites, highlighting MSP in regional and global dialogues, while always ensuring that social and environmental safeguards are in place. Looking ahead, we aim to expand MSP efforts to additional member states, including Antigua and Barbuda, Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, and Barbados. The regional target is ambitious but achievable, bringing at least 10% of the Caribbean region under active MSP by the end of the decade. In closing, marine spatial planning is not only a technical tool, but also a means to build consensus, balance ocean uses, protect ecosystems, and support sustainable blue growth. Through EU Caribe, Pro-Caribe Plus, and MSPglobal, and the rest of our partners, we are laying the foundation for a resilient and prosperous ocean future in the wider Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Good. So I will just thank thank Marco for his commitment to actually share the Caribbean experience, in this session. And at this point, I will end the session and invite our MSP Global Communication Assistant, Charles Martins, to interact again with the audience. Thank you. Over to you, Asia.
Thank you. Do another poll together. This time also one question. Which type of regional activities have you already in your region? Will be launched. There you go. Please check all answers that apply. Give you a minute to think. Few more seconds. Okay, it looks like everybody voted. More. Okay. Let's have a look at the results. Okay. Quite balanced. Thank God nobody is not interested in our activities. That's great. Oh, thank you very much for participating in this poll again. I will give the floor to Michelle now.
Thank you, Asia. So we now move to the closing. And so I'll be very brief, but I would like to say that on behalf of both IOC and the DG MARE, I would like to thank the MSP Global 2.0 team for their dedication to deliver all these products that we mentioned today. I would like to also thank, and I have no words enough to thank, all the contributors and reviewers of the new publications. For each publication, we had about 20, 30 people contributing to them in a voluntary basis, and this is amazing. And among them, we also were able to include IOC colleagues from other sections, programs, and projects, but as well to work with other UN agencies, such as the UN Global Compact, UNEP, the CBD Secretariat, the UNFCCC. So a lot of experts from local to global level helping us with these new products. I'd like to also thank the IOC subcommissions for the collaboration that we have done for MSP activities and that will continue under 3.0. Also to thank regional organizations that helped us, that worked together with us actually in the regional activities, such as the Abidjan Convention Secretariat for the activities in the Atlantic coast of Africa, also SPC, the Pacific Community, in the activities in Fiji. For the rapid assessment, I would like to thank again our national focal points to implement the methodology in these countries. And I'd like to thank the speakers for today's event, but also the attendees. The chat was very live. We could see the exchange among all of you, but also with us. I saw some suggestions for the new products, and thank you for that. I always mention that these new guidelines, data toolbox, and so on, we are not reinventing the wheel. Our role here is to capture the knowledge that the research community, but also MSP practitioners from around the world have developed in the field of MSP, and make this knowledge available and help to disseminate this knowledge. So thank you all for the suggestions to be included in the upcoming products. And I would like to thank as well the UNESCO technicians and interpreters who supported us with this webinar. And of course, now on behalf of IOC, I would like to thank a lot DG MARE, especially Felix and Laura, for the partnership for 2.0 and 3.0. It's a pleasure to really work as a team with you. With that, we close the event. But before that, before I leave, I would just like to call Asia for a last time for really last a few questions to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I have a very last poll for you. This one will be open for the next 10 minutes so that you can take your time. Would love to know your expectations and recommendations for the third phase. And we would appreciate very much if you would rate today's event. So I'll be launching poll now, and you just take your time. I thank everybody very much for today. If you want to stay on top of MSP Global, the best thing would be to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also Skype. So make sure to follow us there to register for our newsletter and check out our website because all products are there. And thank you and goodbye.